This is City Manager Finley DeGraff and Reed in our studio on a Wednesday morning, as always, as is expected. City Council meeting on Monday. First of all, the COVID-19 report. This is getting worse all over the state, all over the country. The numbers are going up. How are we doing in Lampasas?
Well, I believe we found saw a report last night that there are 39 active cases in Lampasas County.
Wow.
And one thing that, again, this is kind of second-hand passed down from our county health official, but a number of these represent multi-generational households where you may have 2 or 3 or 4 people in the household that have tested positive. There's currently, I believe, 1 hospitalization, and so we're just kind of holding on to that. This has been somewhat of a spike, but again, I think the qualifier is the number of folks that have tested positive within a household in some cases.
Isn't that a peak, maybe the highest we've seen? Or?
I don't know that it's the highest we've seen, but it's certainly the highest we've seen here recently. I mean, we were averaging like between 15 and 25, so this does represent more cases than we've been reporting on recently.
Well, that's scary in a lot of ways, but we're opening up. Bars all over Texas.
Yes.
Are opening up, and here in Lampasas County we've accepted the governor's recommendations on all this.
Correct. And I believe, my understanding, and we'd have to probably check this out with the county judge, but I believe this impacts primarily less than a half a dozen establishments within the county. A lot of the other establishments that would be impacted have tried to go ahead and open under a restaurant license,
right.
and through the sale of not only on-site but trucks, food trucks as well as merchandise can count for that 51%. So there are a lot of establishments and wineries that have been operating under that status here in the county prior to this.
And in spite of COVID-19, Lampasas continues to expand, or at least change its face. A lot of things went on at the city council meeting I wanted to ask you about. One, I guess, the biggest thing is a request to close down an alleyway for a prospective development that's going to take up a good-sized chunk of land, 7, 8 lots, something like that, behind the, or as a part of the old Aaron's building.
Correct. That was conditionally approved by City Council, and the struggle that we have with development up and down Key Avenue is those lots are literally half a block deep, and so if some restaurant or other business establishment wants to come in, a lot of times we'll have to do something like what we did Monday night, which is replat it, take a look at the utilities in the alley, and then some way allow them the use of the alley that divides that block. So that's the action that council took up, and I think certainly we're looking forward to some additional development along Key.
That business of closing an alleyway and turning it over to a business as part of their parking area, precedent was kind of set on that, I guess, years ago with the I guess actually with a
Sonic
car dealership or an HEB or something on Key Avenue, and then McDonald's and Sonic did it, so it continues. So anyway, I know at this point, I guess deeds haven't been signed and stuff like that.
Right.
So you're not going to talk about the name, but we can all conjure up what would want nearly a whole block, lots of parking area, and that definitely sounds like it ought to be some sort of a restaurant or something. Anyway,
I will mention that typically those alleys, a lot of alleys have utilities in them, and one of the one of the conditions that council wanted to protect was, the public utilities that are currently within that alley, and so they've been very thoughtful about making sure those utilities are protected and we have access to them. We can do the ongoing maintenance to them.
Could that possibly wind up with having to dig up pavement in the parking lot
Could.
of these places?
Yeah, if they're underground utilities,
yeah,
yes.
So is there any special preparation that's made where an alleyway is covered there to make it easier to dig up or something?
I think the approach that the city's taken previously is, first and foremost, we want to make sure those utilities that are going to be under pavement are in good shape. So, for example, if we have a marginal line or a line with a belly in it or an older line, then we'll go ahead and replace that prior to the pavement. But then it's just a matter of making sure it's marked, it's compacted well, and the pavement and the improvements are up to our standards.
Okay. One curious thing that if you didn't watch the meeting on YouTube or you weren't there or anything, one curious thing that pops up in our news is the discussions anyway on the possibility of some kind of drive-in movie for the youth of Lampasas.
Right.
Just talking, but what in the world kind of an idea is that? Tell us what the council's thinking about.
And it's an idea that has come through the Parks and Rec department and the Park Board, and typically every year the city will show movies at Brook Park. We'll show them at Hannah Springs swimming pool, and of course none of that happened this year. And so the idea was hatched, well, maybe, could we do a drive-in movie as a way to offer that to the public and come and maybe do it in conjunction with another youth group that would perhaps sell popcorn and things like that. But it's not an unusual idea for the city. We've been doing this for years and years on the smaller scale. We just haven't been able to do any of those events this year.
But it's an idea where you might, say, use a church parking lot or something like that.
Church parking lot, high school parking lot.
Put up a screen, yeah.
And, of course, all of these mobile movie companies, they've all geared up because that's what a lot of people are requesting. They want to be able to park 50 cars, and so everybody can stay distanced and watch a movie.
Well, Ken Guntarek well remembers the drive-in movies. He loved them when he was a teenager. Anyway, let's see. Other things that we might talk about. Police Chief Sammy Bailey wanting to restrict or regulate in some way pedestrian crossing across Highway 281 out in the vicinity south of the Sulphur Creek.
Sure. And this is something that's been brought to attention last week or the previous meeting. We took up the issue in the matter of parking on the right-of-way of 281 up and down, basically just park off the roadway in the grass. And that caused a safety concern, and it was brought to our attention about, well, we've got a lot of people that are crossing 281 for special events there, putters and gutters, and using parking lots across the street, which also creates a potential hazard to pedestrians. So this is another step to kind of make sure that 281 corridor stays safe.
If that 281 corridor is going to continue to develop, it's not just out by putters and gutters. You've got a sizable RV park on one side of Highway 281 and a golf course on the other.
Right.
I can imagine how there might be a lot of folks wanting to walk across Highway 281 at that point. So are we talking about creating walkways, and if you have walkways, you're going to have stoplights? So is that something that TxDOT would have to get involved with?
Potentially, yes, but that's not what we anticipate. If you want to walk across 281, you need to go to Naruna or a signalized intersection.
out in the vicinity of putters and gutters. There's not a signal intersection right there.
Correct, but they do provide off-site parking and shuttle service, so hopefully this will encourage folks to utilize that.
Okay. All righty. Other things, city, we've been talking for a few weeks about a skate park and a community garden over in the park area, east side of Key Avenue. And over in that section in Campbell Park, we're talking about a pavilion. And I wonder, has there been some sort of concept design of a pavilion made? How big a facility are we talking about as compared to the Hancock Park Pavilion?
Yeah, I think we're talking about something that would be of similar size, probably 5,000 to 6,000 square feet covered. This is a conversation, as we pointed out to council, we've been having since, for a long time. It's actually part of our capital improvement program committee's report. But it's something that we've been talking about for quite some time. Practically every meeting since July, we've been talking about skate park, pavilion, community gardens, all those improvements to Campbell Park. And council wants to at least take a look at using a design-build method to try to identify the precise design. But I think generally speaking, the expectation is it's going to be covered in the order of 5,000 to 6,000 square feet.
Okay. And the last thing I want to ask about that honestly does confuse me a little bit is the internet companies coming into the area, bandwidth. We know that we've got 4, I guess, internet companies, 4 majors. Is that right? Here in Lampasas right now, building.
AT&T, I think Suddenlink has an internet presence, and then we've got NextLink and Roll Call that are building out.
Okay. And we're talking about fiber optic coming into residential areas, and I know that there was an agreement made for pole use with one of the companies at least. But what confuses me is you can't have all of these companies putting fiber on poles. It would seem to be a logical statement to me. So what's going to happen as these companies start to build out? Do you have a similar agreement with AT&T? Does they want to start bringing fiber on every street in town? Are they going to put them on poles?
And I think the position that the city took and council took, and frankly we had to take, is it's a non-discriminatory access. So in other words, if we have room on that pole, you would be allowed to attach under our conditions. Everybody pays the same price for that attachment, and providing there's room, there's access. What will happen at some point, perhaps, is that a pole will be underrated or will not have the required spacing between our utility and the telecom utilities, and therefore then if we had to upgrade that pole, for example, that cost would be borne by the ISP.
So does pretty much every pole in Lampasas already have wireline telephone service on it?
We have, I don't know the exact number of poles we have in town, but the recent audit that I looked at, there are about 1,900 utility poles in Lampasas that have AT&T on them, and then some additional ones that have Suddenlink, not quite as many Suddenlink lines on them, but I think our pole inventory is on the order of about 4,000 poles. So about half our poles have something on them.
Can you tell me what the majority of the poles will take? I know that whenever you put up one of these phone lines or cable TV lines, you've got a piece of messenger cable to support. those lines. How many of those things can you put on a pole?
So, and that depends on the pole, but you're exactly right. There are two factors. One is what's that pole rated for in terms of the weight and the stress that's put on it, as well as what is the spacing that's there from that telecom space to the electric space. So we need to keep 4 feet in between telecom and our utility lines, and if there's more room than that, then typically it's an every foot access.
So telecom could go a foot below another telecom line.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So you could come 4 or 5 feet down below the electric line
Certainly.
on different poles.
But you're
It's going to be a curious question to me, how many internet companies are going to be able to come in and get space granted to them.
right. But you're exactly right that at some point, if we have to upgrade a pole either because of the load or because of the spacing, we've told our ISPs that that's your responsibility at that point. In terms of the cost, that we won't let them plant a pole in our.
That's going to be interesting. Your contract with NextLink, does it specify how many poles they're going to use, or do they have?
Yeah, typically they will provide us their routing and the number of poles, et cetera, in phases. So they may do 100 poles at a time and come in and provide our the engineering on the next 100 poles.
So can you tell me what currently they have access to?
I believe both groups have taken about 150 pole bites out of the network. And we fully anticipate them to come back once they get close to the completion of those to say, okay, here's the next 100.
Okay, that's going to be an interesting development, I guess. Okay, what have I missed that may be of importance to folks?
Mike Blair asked me to thank everybody for staying away from West Avenue E. They're continuing to make good progress. Got curb and gutter basically installed from Porter to Spring. They've done a good job compacting the base up there, and they're continuing to work to the east. So we appreciate that. We also have a lot of contractors in town. If you're traveling, for example, on West 3rd Street, in the vicinity of Landon, we're going to have some road closures up there as LCRA is working on their transmission line that goes through the western part of town.
I understand.
We've got Dakota on Key Avenue that's doing some underground utility work. So anyway, there are a lot of folks working in town. Please keep your eyes open and just be aware of what's going on around you.
All right. Lampasas City Manager Finley DeGraff and Reed in our studio on Wednesdays. Be sure and tune in and catch the video on YouTube or some of our social media channels or on lampasasradio.com. I'm Ronnie Witcher. You're listening to KCYL KACQ Radio.
The Country Blend, KACQ 1019 FM.